what I wanted to talk about tonight is kind of a little bit, more than just the laws of kosher, but more like the perspective, the philosophy that the Jewish people have had with regards to food. Because, like, I guess, really all humans, we have somewhat of a tortured relationship with food. In a certain way, we kind of view it very positively, kind of from a spiritual perspective. Obviously, everyone needs to eat food. On the other hand, we kind of have some very sharp and negative things to say about overindulgence and kind of making it a priority in our life. So I wanted to kind of dig in a little bit into some of the sources and what they say about food and kind of what we can learn from it, not only just in isolated respect to eating and food, but also to kind of the big picture of Judaism, kind of what's it all about and what the lesson is and where we're heading to. Okay, so I want to start off with two questions, and you guys let me know what you think here. So number one, we start off with this idea. So we make all these blessings, right? And a blessing, of course, is something spiritual, right? We're invoking the name of the Almighty. The Almighty gave us all these wonderful things. And indeed, we're not the only people that eat, right? Jews like their food, right? Especially bagels and deli, right? We like food, but eating is not really a Jewish or spiritual or religious activity. So why are we marking the activity that is ubiquitous and universal, and we're making that something spiritual? Like, why is there a mitzvah? It's not like you put on tefillin or you do mezuzah or you engage in some sort of religious activity, then it makes sense to make a blessing. When you engage in something which is entirely mundane, right? You're eating. It's mundane. Why would you make a religious ceremony out of it? I'll give you guys another example. We don't make a blessing when we breathe, do we? Breathe like a Jew, right? Do we or don't we? Huh?
Constantly making a bracha.
Well, what's wrong with that? You're saying it's just impractical, right?
You get nothing
But
else
you're
done.
constantly eating, right? We eat all the time. We make blessings all the time. Maybe we should make blessings while we breathe, right?
Don't
Well,
we do it when we wake up, though? Don't we,
okay,
we
maybe.
do, the prayers where we say, thank you for the breath that I woke up, and then move on with the
Yeah,
day.
so
you don't do it all day
actually,
long.
this is a little bit of a red herring because especially
Okay, sorry.
there is this idea. No, you're right, and that is that indeed we are told that we're supposed to thank the Almighty. Al kol nishima unishima tehalel ka. We have to thank God for every breath that we take. And I think the idea is interesting where we have this intersection between the life we live as humans. And all humans live where we eat, we breathe, and then we have life that we live as Jews. We have this overlay of a religious experience onto a mundane activity, or what maybe could have been mundane. I think that's interesting. And I think another way to ask the same question, and I've been asked this question many, many times, and I'm sure you guys have encountered people asking this question, if you don't have this question yourself. And that is, does the Almighty really care if I eat cheeseburgers? We know that mixing milk and meat, that's part of Kosher 101. Mixing milk and meat is prohibited by Jewish law. Well, of course, why would you do it? But the question is, what's the meaning behind it? And the Almighty in His holy Torah, the creator of heaven and earth and all the cosmos, and this is what concerns Him? Whether or not we eat milk and meat, or if we wait a little bit between eating milk and meat. Is this really so important?
Is it the humane thing to do, because you don't cook the calf in its mother's womb?
Well, that's how it's presented in the Torah, but
Right.
it's not only that. Like, the mitzvah that we have is to not have a slab of cheese put on your burger.
Right.
So that's nothing to do with being humane. That's just a mitzvah.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, is that really so important? Is that a good question?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Is it a good question? Has
You
anyone
want the
ever encountered
answer.
that question? Huh? What do you guys say? Why do we have so many mitzvahs governing how we eat, what we eat? And by the way, this mitzvah would extend to anything. Like, is it so important to the Almighty whether or not we mix different kinds of materials in making your suit? If you see Rabbi Johnny's suit, so I guarantee you that he has some sort of label inside of it that says it doesn't have shotness.
Does it have a what?
Shotness.
What?
Shotness.
What's that?
What?
Well, it's shotness, right?
Yeah.
So the Torah said that you have the label.
It's embarrassing.
Oh my God.
So
Says shot in
the
his
Torah
hand.
says Jews are not allowed to wear clothing comprised of wool and linen mixed together. And the question is,
I think I might have some.
wool and linen together?
I don't know. I have to check.
Okay, well, so it's unlikely, but it's possible.
I mean, it's Texas. You don't really wear wool in Texas.
I don't think it's very
You certainly don't wear
common.
linen, huh?
I don't think it's very common.
It's not very common.
You
It
check
does.
labels and clothes, it's hardly ever.
Well, it's almost never in the label. But the problem is that sometimes it's in the fabric. It's in the seams, in linings, especially very high-priced suits for men.
Yeah.
Now, is it really important to the Almighty if we wear wool and linen together? Is that a good question? Is that so important? What do y'all say, guys? Huh?
I'm sure there's a reason.
Of course, there's a reason, but
Isn't it one of those mitzvahs where we don't know why we're...
yeah, but there's a lot. Like I think the laws of kosher would fall into that category as well, and I think it's a legitimate question to ask. What is the reason why you would have such a mitzvah, which seems to be doesn't really impact your life as a human, right? So I want to give a little bit of perspective, I think, of what the Talmud said. The Talmud says something very bizarre, I think, at least on face value. And it says like this. Listen to this, guys. Okay, I want to see if you guys can explain this to me. I'm looking at you, Tzvi. Can you explain this to me? Like this. Talmud says, before you pray that words of Torah should enter your innards, into your stomach, pray that delicious, delectable foods should not enter your innards.
You said that, so you have to go to.
What?
What does that mean, right?
Have to go to service again? Sorry?
Well, you say that every day. You have to go to services before you eat breakfast. So you have coffee.
Well, but this is a little bit different. This is not pray beforehand. Before you pray that Torah goes into your belly, into your innards, pray that food, delectable, delicious food, does not go into your innards.
Why can't you have...
What prayer is there to not have food go into your... First of all, where's the food go if it's not into your innards?
We just don't swallow.
Huh? Well, your soul doesn't need food.
It's true. It's true.
Maybe
Well, where does the food go to? Doesn't it go to your innards, right?
maybe it means... it's
Didn't you
not
talk about your
swallowed.
GI earlier? Right? What does this mean, guys? This is the Talmud. It has to make sense.
Maybe
It can't
it's
just
not
mean...
talking about food in general, it's talking about certain kinds of foods that you shouldn't eat.
It says ma'adanim, which means, or megadim, which means delicious food.
Right, so maybe it just means don't enjoy this world too much.
Don't have too much... Oh, okay.
Wow.
I think, okay, so let's kind of dig into this a little bit here. I think that what the Talmud's telling us, like what you're saying, is that foods present a very unique challenge to us. You know, if you go a week without eating food, you might die. Well, I don't know if a week, maybe you'll need 2 weeks. But if you go a significant, people have died of hunger, right? So we need food. Yet there are some people that make food an end unto itself, a value unto itself. When, like Ori said, it's fuel. It's something that you need, but it ought not be a focus. I'll give you guys an example. You know, we are told in the Mishnah that this world, our entire existence in this world, is compared to a corridor before a ballroom, before a hall. So you're walking down a long hall, and you really want to get to the end. So our existence here as humans is just trying to get to the end. Get to the end, the end of the hall, of the hall. Give you guys an example, right? We have Buc-ee's. This is the first time I was in Buc-ee's.
Became a thing. Everybody Facebook's.
And the reason why it's so bizarre, what's bizarre about it? It used to be that
It's a gas station.
when you went to
Huge gas station with the cleanest bathroom.
if you went to you went on a long drive,
That's all it is.
There's like a million things you can buy at Buc-ee's. Saying it's a gas station is kind of confusing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
That's true.
There, especially if you go to certain ones, there's like a giant Buc-ee's statue at certain ones.
My first one, I took
It's
a
a
picture
giant
with
beaver.
Buc-ee's.
Giant beaver.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a giant beaver.
And there's a mascot that you can buy souvenirs.
I think that's so
It's a
weird.
beaver.
I have
pet.
a
Okay, alright,
beaver.
sorry.
but it's the reason why it's unique is because it used to be that you stop for gas and you stop to get a Diet Coke.
Yeah.
like it was just a stop,
Yeah.
and now it's a destination. And this is, I think, the Buc-ee's effect is the mistake that we make in our lives. The mistake that we make is we don't realize that when we're here on this earth, we're traveling somewhere. And when you're traveling somewhere, you just want to get there. So you need to stop for gas, you stop to go to the bathroom, but really your mind is on the goal, it's on the destination. And then comes along Buc-ee's and says, no. Settle down. Right? This is a place to come and spend time. Buy souvenirs. Who used to buy souvenirs at gas stations?
Hilarious.
It's hilarious, right? You have rows and rows of souvenirs at Buc-ee's, right? And that's essentially a microcosm of what life for us is here. We really have to get to our destination, and everything else is a distraction. And then we have Buc-ee's on every side. And you know what happens to your Buc-ee's on every side? You never get to where you need to go. And you lose sight of your destination. You turn off your GPS and say, what a nice place to stay. I'll stay here. I don't need to go to vacation in Austin or in Dallas. I'll just stop at Buc-ee's and I'll just move in over here. I'll get in one of the cheap motels and settle down. And is that a mistake? Of course that's a mistake. I thought of another example. Listen to this. That was my first mushal of the day, first analogy. Listen to this analogy. Imagine you got really expensive tickets to the Super Bowl.
Yay.
Someday, right? Well, actually, 2017, we're having the Super Bowl here in Houston, right?
I'm leaving.
Yeah, I'm leaving with you.
There's no freaking way I'm gonna be here. I'm going home. There's no way I'm gonna be here.
So you have tickets to the Super Bowl, but you also got two tickets. You're bringing your boy, your son, your 10-year-old boy, and you're walking there, and we know there's a lot of festivities around the stadium.
What team is playing?
There's festivities around the stadium, and the kid says, let's stop over here and get some cotton candy. So you stop and get some cotton candy. And let's stop over here, let's buy some memorabilia. And you stop over there, buy some, and you get a hot dog, and you go, and eventually you get to the stadium and the game's over. Can you imagine how depressing that would be? You just spent $5,000 on each ticket, and you stopped outside and just, all you wanted to do, you were distracted. And this is essentially the primary danger that we have with regards to food. Yeah, it's an example of that. But in general, all the physical, material, and carnal pleasures that we could possibly have, if they become a destination unto their own, if they become an end unto their own, well, then we lose sight of what we're really here for. And that's what the Talmud's telling us. The Talmud's telling us, before you pray, that Torah becomes your innards, your kishtris, as they say in Yiddish. Right? It becomes your essence, what your focus is. You have to be careful that food does not. And food is not just food, it's representative of everything that could potentially disrupt our focus. The most dangerous thing that could happen to us in life is to not realize that we're in a hall, we're in a corridor, that we're traveling. We have an ultimate destination, and that's where we need to go, and we need to get there. And it's of critical existential importance that we don't lose sight of our goal, of our destination. And comes along food, so food's one example. But there's loads of examples. And by the way, if you ever heard of the term Yetzer Hara, that term, has anyone heard that term? Yetzer Hara or Yetzer Hara? Or evil inclination in English? How would you imagine that the evil inclination is described in the Talmud?
That voice in your head that says you come
Sitra.
No, that's not how it's described in the Talmud. Come on, Johnny, you learn Talmud. Yetzer Hara. Well, okay, but it has a nickname in the Talmud.
Does?
Do you know what its nickname is? No one knows here. Anyone wants to know? Anyone's curious? This is from, huh?
What message do we
Secret whisperer.
Secret what?
He whispers secrets.
Oh, no. It's what it is like this. It says that it's the yeast in the dough. Seor shebe'isa. Yeast in the dough. What, in the name of God, does that have to do with Yetzer Hara? Evil inclination. The answer is like this. If you have matzah, right? Matzah fulfills what Ori needs. It's fuel so your body can run, so the engine can run. Comes along, you throw in a dose of yeast. Huh?
You ever tried to digest
It's so hard.
You take yeast, and suddenly you have this big, beautiful, delicious bread. It's the same ingredients, right? Nutritionally, they're identical. The only difference is that one of them is Buc-ee's. One of them is a destination. One of them is something you're like, oh, bread. Like, no one salivates over matzah. No one. Actually, I knew some people that do. I actually do know some people that do. Yeah, Rwanda he salivates over matzah.
Also the matzah pizza, people are very...
People like matzah pizza.
You know that pizza they charge $20 for? One slice, $20? I don't know.
So, that's what the Yetzer Hara does. It takes everything, every distraction on the way to the stadium, every distraction along our path to the destination, and puffs it up. And this is Buc-ee's. I love it. You've seen how big it is. I took my kids there. It's like, it's enormous. What happened to the little gas station that's so disgusting? You kind of have to, how is it possible that humans defiled a bathroom to such an extent? It's terrible. And then suddenly you have Buc-ee's, and it's so different. And that's what the Yetzer Hara does. It says, lose sight of your destination and focus on just the distractions along the way.
Does that mean you should live in a shack eating matzah every day?
Matzah. Well, what's interesting is that we only eat matzah for 8 days, 7 or 8 days a year. And I think the reason why we eat matzah for 7 to 8 days a year is to remember this point. It's to remember this point. It's to remember that our life over here is temporary. By the way, you know what else we do 7 or 8 days a year? We sit in a sukkah. What's a sukkah? It's a temporary.
Basically.
It's a temporary residence. And those two are exact parallels of each other. Every half a year, we have this touch point with the realization that we're here temporarily. When you're traveling, it's not so important. You stop along the side of the way, you find a cheap motel, and if someone would say, this is where you live? No, it's not where I live. This is where I stop over on my way to my journey. There was a great story of the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim, some guy came to him and said to him, Chafetz Chaim was one of the great sages of the past, quarter millennium. Someone came to his house in Radin, in Poland, and he had the most meager, bare furniture. It was embarrassing. The guy said to him, is this where you live? It's so meager. And he says to him, well, what should I have instead? He says, we should have nice furniture, we should have a nice couch, nice comfortable tables. And he says, well, what about you? Where's your table? He's like, well, my table's in my home, my permanent home. He says, my table and my furniture is also in my permanent home. Here, if you view life as he did, that it's just a journey, then okay, you could survive. It's not your permanent residence. Like when you rent a house, right? You rent a house, and it doesn't be perfect, right? Yeah, you don't have to worry so much about the walls. Something gets scratched, no big deal. But if you buy a house, this is where you're going to live, then it has to be super nice. So you're right. It's not something we think about all the time. But we have to remember, in every half a year, we have a holiday that the core mitzvah of the holiday is this point, again and again. And I'll say that this is why we have this duplicitous relationship with food. Because on one hand, we're told we have to pray that food doesn't become part of our lives. Pray, you have to daven. It's not just enough to avoid it. You have to pray because it's dangerous, because it can become a focus. And if it becomes a focus and you lose sight of your real focus, your life is in great peril.
Is that not relying on a miracle?
Huh?
Is it not relying on a miracle? Something you can do yourself. You can just have self-control and you can do it.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I'll tell you, you could do it on your own, but comes along the Torah. What does the Torah say? No cheeseburgers. Is there something kind of objectively wrong about cheeseburgers? Maybe yes, maybe no. We don't know. But either way, what the Torah is telling us, pull back a little bit. Have some sort of physical pleasures that you're not going to indulge in. And even if it's arbitrary, it's totally arbitrary. Let's assume it's totally arbitrary. It was just picked out of a hat. Still, we find meaning to that, because if you regulate yourself to, at least in certain instances in your life, not get caught up by the distractions, even though it won't be everything, of course, we could have a lot of delicious, wonderful kosher food, right? But once we have some things that we say no to, we regulate ourselves to say, this is something you don't need, this is something we could pass. That kind of changes our perspective to make our entire life to get used to the idea of saying no. So I'll say, does God really care about cheese? It's not about cheeseburgers. It's about developing a life attitude in which not everything that we want, that our body wants, do we actually stop and have this as a distraction. And the more we mitigate the influence of the distractions in the life, the more likely it is that we'll actually keep our eye on the real prize. And that is what will actually happen to us, eternally with our soul. Now, I think there's some really cool stories. Some cool stories. I think you guys like stories. We could look at it as almost a one-for-one swap, a zero-sum game. The more you focus or the more you abstain from a physical-centric perspective, a body-centric perspective on life, the more your spiritual reality grows in direct, commensurate measure. And by rejecting, by eschewing, by limiting, by mitigating, by attenuating, by minimizing your connection to the physical, as per the guidance of the Torah, automatically that void is going to be filled by a more spiritual-centric approach. I'll give you a cool story. Rabbi Israel Salanter, 1817 to 1883. One of the great personalities, Jewish personalities, Rabbi Israel Salanter, 1817 to 1883. One of the great personalities originally of Lithuania, and then he moved to Germany in 1857. One of the most hotly debated issues of the 19th century in Jewish Europe was why Rabbi Israel Salanter left Lithuania and moved to Germany, which is essentially the equivalent of someone leaving Bnei Brak and moving into the red light district in Amsterdam. Like, it's just, why would someone do that? But either way, he was a smoker. No, he was a smoker. Now you'll say, wait a minute, Rabbi, how is a rabbi a smoker? Don't you know that smoking causes cancer?
They didn't know back then.
Well, in 1964, the Surgeon General came out with the warning that smoking causes cancer. He died in 1883.
Right. So
You see these old pictures where everyone's smoking, like indoors, and you're like, whoa, what's going on there, right? Either way, he was a smoker. And one night, he woke up, middle of the night, and he wanted a cigarette. Now, what's the problem? Just take a cigarette and smoke it, right? The problem was he didn't have any cigarettes. The only place to get a cigarette was about a mile away, like 15-minute walk. So he said, why don't you just drive there? Well, cars weren't invented yet. So what do? How many options does he have? He is in the middle of the night. He's tired, wants to go back to sleep, wants a cigarette. So either he could go and get the cigarette, or he could go back to sleep. Those are his two options, correct? Which one do you think he chose?
Do you want to get a cigarette?
Oh, you can say he wants to get the cigarette. Danielle, what do you think?
Go back to sleep.
We're back to sleep. What do you say, Johnny? Cigarette. Cigarette.
it's definitely a cigarette.
Yeah.
Cigarette?
Most people are
Cigarette.
so, like,
Okay, you know what? Out of your 6 answers, you're all wrong. He found the third option.
what?
That's not fair.
I can't believe no one called me out for every single time you ever hear me in class saying, is it this or is it that? You say, well, it's maybe a third option.
Someone else to go and get.
No, listen to what he did. Listen to this calculation. Listen to this calculation, ladies and gentlemen. Listen to what he said. And this is exactly what I'm trying to tell you here, at least in the first half of this, and we'll spin it on its head in the other half. This is all the food is negative kind of element of Jewish philosophy. If I go back to sleep, why would I go back to sleep?
Because you're tired.
You're tired and you're lazy.
Well, it's a
So-
good way to get rid of the idea that you want a cigarette.
And
you're not
that.
thinking
Well, you're tired and you're lazy, because if you had a cigarette there, you'd smoke it, right?
about it, and then you get tired and go to sleep.
So the reason, the motivation that you would have to go back to sleep, like Danielle said, would be because it's the middle of the night, you're tired, you're lazy, right? And by going to sleep and giving into that, you're reinforcing your laziness. Now, let's say he says, I'm going to go there, I'm not going to be lazy, and I'm going to go get the cigarette. What's motivating that? The desire for the cigarette, right? So either way, you're going to be reinforcing a negative character. So Rabbi Israel Salanter said like this, I'm going to get up, get dressed, walk to the store. I'm not going to buy the cigarette. I'm going to walk back and go to sleep.
Well, what is that accomplishing?
Oh, what does it accomplish? What it accomplishes is it's an example of
not being
combating the negative character. That's what it is. He says, listen, I have different forces. My laziness says go to sleep. My desire for the physical fulfillment says go get the... I'm going to battle them both. I'm not going to be lazy. I'm going to go there. I'm not going to give in. I'm going to go back to sleep.
I'm going to challenge the rabbi. I have an issue with that.
Go ahead.
We, in Judaism, I can give you many examples of times where we are not encouraged to test our Yetzer Hara.
Really?
We're not encouraged
Go
to
ahead.
test
Give me an example.
our evil inclination.
Give me an example.
There are examples of biblical personalities that challenged God to give them difficulty.
Well, no,
That's number one.
no,
Number two
whoa,
is
slow down. That's not a good example.
Yeah.
Because this is not someone who's asking for a challenge. He was presented with a challenge. He didn't bring the challenge upon himself.
He's going to the store to not buy a cigarette.
But did
He was
bring it
presented
on
with a
himself?
challenge. No.
Because he started smoking, so he created, so the addiction
Well,
was created.
okay, fine. That's a different argument.
Meaning,
The point is that
why
right
put-
now,
why put himself in harm's way.
what's the harm's way?
Well, if we consider Avera sin, let's call it, okay? I don't know. If that is
It's not- no, there's-
spiritual danger.
well, there's no
Listen,
sin
if
here.
someone- what do you mean? Do you believe that smoking cigarettes is dangerous?
Well, he didn't believe it, so that's irrelevant. This was not about sin. This was about what's called indulgence. That's what it's about. And this is an example of a Jewish attitude of refraining from doing things and thus empowering your soul. If you stunt your body and your body's desires and its whims, by definition, you embolden and empower your soul. Thus, I think look at all the kosher laws. And by the way, all the laws of the Torah to begin with, all of them. Don't do this on Shabbos, don't do that on Shabbos, don't do this on Shabbos, a whole list of things. A whole laundry list of things you can't do on Shabbos. All these things you can't do. What is that creating? What model is that creating for you? That is a model of forcing you to tell your desires no. To have willpower to learn to say no.
It's so hard, though.
It's so hard. Okay, but the Torah is encouraging us to become great people. The only way we become great people is if we learn this quality. And thus, we have the most delicious food in the world. You know, I know people, whenever they have a plate, even to go to a fancy restaurant, right? Every time they fill up the plate with food, they always leave a little bit of the plate that they don't finish. You know, like when you're stuffing yourself, oh, it's so delicious. And you're like, I'll just have like 2 or 3 more bites to finish it off. I'm not hungry at all, but it's so delicious. Right? That is allowing a certain part of your desires to overtake your focus, right? If food is fuel and potentially a distraction as well, learn to say no. You learn to say no, and by doing that, you're in a small minor way, you are emboldening your capacity, your soul, and weakening your body, thus weakening the forces of these distractions in life. Yes?
Did I not about touch?
Maybe.
Explain.
Yeah, but remember, your body is not a garbage can.
Baltashkas is...
Baltashkas means we don't waste. We don't waste. Is it waste? It's not waste. Is it waste to stuff it in your, like, if you guys don't need everything here, I should just eat it all myself? No, find another way. I find another way to give it to the dog. I don't know. Or give it to poor people, or give it.
Restaurant, what are you gonna do? Take it with you?
Well, okay, the restaurant throws out lots of. It doesn't matter. Your body's not a garbage can.
Would this concept, Rabbi, fall into the whole...
Go ahead.
Fall into the whole no pain, no gain concept? I'll tell you an example. Ori, for example, goes to the gym, right? In the initial stages of you toning yourself up, you are subjecting your body to difficulty, right? I had a roommate who was very into the Navy SEAL program. All of it, no weights, no machines, just push-ups, sit-ups, chin-ups, and pull-ups. And his motto was, pain is weakness leaving the body. I don't know if it's true or not true. The point is, toning and doing something like that hurts. But why are you putting yourself through that? Because you believe in the eventual outcome being better.
Yes.
So here as well, right, this limitation is...
Resistance.
This resistance.
Yeah, and I'll bring you some sort of sources for what you're saying.
Okay.
We find in the Midrash. So the Midrash is a Talmud equivalent here to Talmud, right? These are ancient Jewish documents, which if you want to know what the Jews believe about any issue, look what the Talmud or the Midrash says about it. And the Talmud says as follows: Vayar Elokim kol asher asa v'hinei tov. Thank you. The Almighty saw everything that He made, and behold, it was exceedingly good. Says the Midrash, Tov ze yetzer tov. Tov, good, refers to the good inclination. Me'od, exceedingly good, ze yetzer ra. This is the evil inclination. What is good? Good is the good inclination. What's superb, fantastic, wonderful, exceedingly good. That's the evil inclination. Do you know why? Because only the evil inclination presents with us the resistance that allows us to overcome that and become great ourselves. So yes, on one hand, it's evil, it's negative because it's resistance, right? It's like you bring the gym example. It's a great example. Everyone in the gym is suffering. Why would they pay money to suffer? The answer is they're suffering, but the result of their suffering is beneficial for them. So it's difficult, it's resistance, but the net for us is opportunity for greatness.
You know, just in line with what the rabbi's saying, very often
The
in
rabbi.
movies and fiction, when you think about the angel of good and the angel of bad, you have one with the halo on the head and one with the pitchfork, which are with red and like angry looking, right? But the truth is that the Talmud equates the evil inclination, the angel of death, and the Satan as one being. It's all the same being, the same thing. So my rabbi said something very inspiring, actually. He said that an angel, we're very limited in our knowledge of how angels work, what they are. One thing we do know about them is that they are commanded to do God's will, and they are perfect in their cause of exclusively. They don't have this power of free will that we do. They are limited to doing God's will. Now, if we believe that God is a God of good, then every angel that's doing the will of God is really just doing good for God. Okay, now follow me here. So if the evil inclination and the angel of death and the Satan are all the same person, then it's, even if it has some negative connotations to it, it's still an angel. An angel is doing the will of God, and God is good. So the way my rabbi described it once, like the rabbi just put it, is that you can imagine that the angel wants you to do good. The evil inclination, the one that's throwing at you the challenges, your livelihood, the health issues, God forbid, the family issues, the difficulty in being Jewish, all the different hardships that you go through in your life, which many people look at those issues and they're like, you know what, why do I need this? I'm so depressed, the hell with this world, you know? But the truth is that if you look at it like the way he's saying it, that every difficulty is really the greatest good, because it's only through overcoming those hardships that spurs me to become that better person, then you can really gain a glimpse to how the evil inclination, i.e. the angel of death, all of those concepts are really only good. They're only there for us to improve and to overcome. If we weren't challenged in our lifetimes, then our life would look like this. We would be stagnant, or we would be the same person in 20, 30 years. Hopefully, our challenges give us this ability to overcome and to change through our experiences.
Okay, so that's one perspective. Now, what about some positivity? So, and this is why I think the issue is a little bit kind of, it's interesting and it's intriguing, because we find, for example, this in the Talmud. The Talmud says, and I know I just mentioned I never in my life have eaten a strawberry, so maybe I'm guilty of this. That a person,
Strawberries and olives.
Strawberry, no, not strawberries nor olives. I don't know if I've ever eaten a grape either.
Olives?
Wait, never had a strawberry?
No.
You never had strawberries?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you try it?
Why don't you try
I know exactly what it tastes like, and I know exactly what consistency it has, and those little things, not so much. Either way, what does the Talmud say about me, right? Talmud says that if someone will be
You
held...
was like a chemistry set, like dissecting it to like know.
Health reason behind why a lot of people, because you know how when you grow up you learn the food pyramid,
Yeah.
and that you're supposed to eat a large amount of fruits and a large amount of vegetables. Well, I'm taking this class. It's a science class for teachers, and part of it is health education, and it deals with certain types of fruits that you're not supposed to eat. Because why do we eat fruits? Because they're sweet. It's basically like eating candy or junk food. And so the reason why most people don't eat fruit, like a large amount of fruit or fruit at all, is just like eating candy.
But I eat plenty of candy, so I guess I get
Well, then
my...
you don't eat fruit.
There you go, exactly.
Isn't it better for you if it's coming from natural sources?
Yeah, of course it's better than
it depends.
artificial.
You might
But
have sugar, but everything has to be eaten in moderation. But
Yeah,
I'm sure every fruit has something good in it.
yeah.
so
Probably 6 p.m.
So the Talmud says as follows. So someone will be held accountable if there's a fruit that they do not partake in. You have to taste it at least once. The Almighty gave us fruits, and they're delicious, and they might give us pleasures in this world for our betterment, for our benefit, for our indulgence. And if I say, oh, you know what, I'm not going to have that, then I'm essentially like refusing the graciousness of and the hospitality of the Almighty, and that's really bad. Not only that, there's the Talmud says that a Nazir is someone who abstains and refrains from drinking wine for a minimum of 30 days. And afterwards, he has to bring an atonement sacrifice, a chatas. You know why? Al shetzir atzmo min yain, because he pained himself by abstaining from wine. So you have to atone if you abstain from pleasures. So which one is it? Are pleasures these evil things that we have to worry about? They're distractions that we need to be concerned. But this is well, that's what I said earlier. But this sounds like positivity, right? This sounds like if you abstain from wine, then you're a sinner. So the only way to not be a sinner is to indulge. So which one is it?
Oh my gosh, just tell me. I don't know.
It's moderation.
Enjoy stuff.
I guess not indulge, but at least partake.
Yeah, but it doesn't say don't partake. It says don't indulge. But it doesn't even say that.
Oh, okay.
It implies that.
Okay, fine. So it says doesn't go into. So well, I think that's a very fair a reconciliation, and that is that okay, you could kind of have it along the journey, but don't make it a pit stop,
Have
right?
a slice of cake, not a whole cake.
Or have a little bit, but don't make it its own.
Used to use the bathroom.
But don't. Yeah, exactly. I was thinking something else. So that's for sure true. I was thinking something else. I was thinking that it's not just that it's allowed, but it's a mitzvah, right? It's once again this intersection of the spiritual and the physical. And the idea being is that we do not view as the proverbial butties as being something which is essentially evil. We don't. Rather, it is evil if you make it its own, its own stage, so to speak. If you make it its own value. But if it's an accompaniment, if it's something which you can partake in and enjoy, but not dwell upon and not make it its own priority, well, then it could be a mitzvah. I'll give you guys an example. We have two people doing the exact identical activity. Two stalls in a restaurant, or two. So you have two booths in a restaurant. And one guy's doing one of the biggest mitzvahs in the world, and one guy's sinning. How is that possible? It means the answer is it's not necessarily about what you do, it's how you do it. If you, like Rabbi Johnny spoke about earlier, if you eat something and you make a blessing, that activity is a mitzvah. Or like what Ori was saying, if you say, hey, I have an ultimate goal, and that's spiritual, and the only way to drive the engine, the only fuel that I need to get there is eating, then my eating is a mitzvah. Because it is assisting me in doing a mitzvah as well. And then you have the other guy who says, you know what, I'm hungry, and doesn't say a bracha, doesn't kind of concentrate upon what the value this is, and they just indulge for it on its own right, and that's essentially taking her off the ball, and that's a distraction. So you could do the same exact identical activity, and one guy's doing a mitzvah, one guy's sitting. I'll give you guys another example. What about sleeping, right? So sleeping is something we all need to do.
Of course.
That's right, we all need to sleep. Yes. But is sleeping a mitzvah or is it not a mitzvah?
Oh, it's a mitzvah. Some people have sleep apnea.
But the fact that some people have sleep apnea does not prove that it's a mitzvah, right?
But some people can't sleep. What about like
So,
sleeping?
is it a mitzvah or not?
So yes, it is a mitzvah that you can sleep because
Well,
like,
it's a benefit that you can
not
sleep,
have,
but is it a mitzvah?
Well, yes.
Well, people can
Which mitzvah is
like,
it?
nap,
Which
but
mitzvah is it?
sleeping
It's
and
preserve your body.
yeah, because your
You
body
need energy.
regenerates
Yeah, you need
once
energy.
you're sleeping. But
And that
Yes, I
and-
agree with you. But are you guaranteeing me that everyone who
Up to 15 minutes.
or everyone who sleeps is focusing on preserving their body?
No, but
This is exactly my point. You have two people taking naps. One guy is doing it with Ori's intention, so they could, be better parents, or they could be better spouses, or they could study Torah better, or they could, it's not a focus unto its own. It's an accompaniment. It's an encouragement to bring you to your ultimate focus. That's a mitzvah. But if I say, hey, my life is about having really long, leisurely, awesome naps. If that's what your life's about, that's the proverbial buckies, right? That is making this world into not a path, a journey to destination, but a destination unto its own. So it's not about what you do, it's about why you do it. And the insight, I think if we could say the one crowning, fundamental, emblematic insight of Judaism is this point. And that is that we don't live in two domains that are separate and distinct from each other. Rather, we live in a world and we choose what realm these domains are. We can choose to have the spiritual overlay onto the physical world. We can choose to have these worlds intersect. We can choose to make a mitzvah out of everything that we do. You could, like I said, you could be eating and doing a mitzvah if you so choose. If you kind of have the same mental calculations of saying, I'm doing this, I'm thanking the Almighty. So there's one element of gratitude. I'm doing it because I need it for my health and well-being. Those are mitzvahs. On the other hand, you have a same guy does the same thing, and to them, it's a destination unto their own, and therefore it's a dereliction of duty. It's an abandoning of life itself, because it's making this world into a destination. And by doing that, you know what you're essentially doing? You're rejecting God. You're repudiating your faith. One guy does a mitzvah, one guy repudiates faith. One guy eats matzah, he's chewing crackers. One guy eats matzah, he's experiencing the Exodus at Mount Sinai. How's that possible? It's the same action. The answer is you choose which physical world you live in. You choose, is my food a mitzvah? Is my sleep a mitzvah? Is my crackers a mitzvah? You can decide. That is the crowning, emblematic insight of Judaism. We can choose to have our worlds intersect. We can choose, it's possible to do every second of your life as another mitzvah. It's possible. You go to sleep and that's a mitzvah. 7 hours of mitzvahs. Or, in my world, maybe an hour and a half of mitzvah and then a break, and then, right?
Think like that when you sleep.
You don't. But what's your intention when you're going to sleep?
Yes, that's my intention.
So that's what we have. We have a blessing that you say. So Danielle taught us about the blessing that we say right when we wake up in the morning. There's a blessing you're supposed to say right before you go to sleep at night. And that essentially is planning what the sleep's about. It's kind of injecting into your sleep the mitzvah element of it.
Do it.
And thus, it's possible that every second of your life you're actually living. And you know what? From the outsider's view, naked eye view, you wouldn't see that this guy's doing a mitzvah. He's going to sleep. Everyone goes to sleep. At night, you look at the two roommates. They're both sleeping. They're both snoring. And one guy's doing mitzvah. One guy's not doing mitzvah. And in fact, one guy could be doing a mitzvah. The other person could be, in fact, rejecting God. And it's crazy. How is it possible? They're doing the same thing. The answer is we choose what world we live in. We choose what our sleep is, what our eating is. And our eating could be a tremendous mitzvah. And it's just bizarre. And, you know, a sizzling steak doesn't sound so spiritual. It sounds savory, I guess. Sumptuous, delectable. Doesn't sound spiritual. No, spiritual is abstaining. Spiritual is, you know, is meditating. It's praying. How is that? The answer is, it could be if you make it. If you have the blessing, if you have the concentration, if you have the mindfulness, if you have the recognition that this is something the Almighty gave to you, and you're appreciative, and you stop for a second to think about it. You live your life with the cognition, with the recognition. You got the word, huh?
I love your verbiage.
Right? With the recognition that.
It is nice. He's going to sleep very well.
But will it be a mitzvah, right? Right? With the recognition that this is from the Almighty. That simple switch that you turn on, that you say, I'm doing this not for an end unto its own, but I have the recognitions from God and I'm using it for its correct purpose. Just that kind of paradigm shift that you can make in your head takes everything that we do into the mitzvah. So I think we talk about kosher 2.0, right? Yes, it's about making sure we eat everything we eat is kosher. Looking on the bottles, making sure it has symbols, making sure it's got the O and the U in it, and the O and the K and the HKA and all these letters, right?
I don't know what the HJA is. What is that?
HKA, Houston Kosher Authority or Association, or whatever it's called.
I
Right?
don't look for that. Is that something
Well, that's good.
important?
Well, no, but if you got it,
So, Dana, the sticker on top.
there we go. So this, we know this one's
Gosh, are
kosher. HKA, Houston Kosher Association.
Oh, that's what that stands for?
That's what it stands for, right? But is that holy eating? It could be
How are you supposed to
if
know
you
that?
make it.
Well, it's got a Torah.
Yeah, but how are you supposed to know it's Houston
Kosher.
kosher?
Well, now you know now.
How are you supposed to know that?
How are we supposed to know what H looks
You
like?
ask. That's how you're supposed to
I
know.
didn't know that that's what that meant. I know what Parav means.
What does far mean?
There's no
Milk
milk in
or
it.
meat.
There's no
Or
you,
we're
you
obviously
know.
meat, but usually milk is true.
You get some companies that just put a K on their food.
What
So,
does
but
that
actually,
mean?
Kellogg's,
Yeah, it's like a K in a
Kellogg's with a K is
triangle.
kosher.
How
Right,
do you know
K-tri-
that?
That's just the way it is.
Kellogg's
And
with a K.
Kellogg's, if it has a K, is kosher.
I mean,
Even if it
You
does
mean there's
not.
Kellogg's with a C?
Oh, I've got to remind you.
No. If it has a small K, not that Kellogg's is spelled.
Dana,
Oh,
you
that
see
was-
this is one of the most famous
Yeah,
Huh?
the OU.
American kosher symbols.
Just the K on Kellogg's only.
This is the OU.
It's kosher.
OU stands for Orthodox
It's just you
Union.
just go to the any grocery store, look for
I know
Kellogg's
all
box.
the
It has a K. It'll have a random K.
I live
No
by-
Like
circles.
one of the most famous
Some of the
ones.
box.
So you're saying it has to be a circle K? Is that what you mean?
Circle K is also good.
So what if it's a triangle?
Danielle has a story.
No. When
Uh,
I was little, I thought Circle K stores, I just made the assumption they were kosher stores.
What's a
What is
circle,
a Circle K
K
store?
You guys don't have them here. They're like the nasty,
None of us grew up here. So
the
like,
nasty
I grew up here.
non-Buckies. like the
oh, yeah.
like Circle K gas
Oh my
station. So I just assumed that these were like
Kosher store.
really cool. They were
Oh,
like
that's
the
so
kosher
cute.
ones.
the whole store is kosher.
Like that's where the juice stops when they need to go.
Amazing. So that's that, guys. We have some other cool things here. You know, I'll give you guys another cool element here of kosher lifestyle.
It's
When
strawberry
you-
daiquiri bag.
When
freeze
you make a blessing,
and then
what are you
Yeah, it's
acknowledging?
alcohol, yeah. It's very low percentage though.
Alcohol.
Yeah, the food came from the Almighty,
Is it good?
correct?
If you like fruity girly drinks.
I think
How do you make food?
from the ground. It
But
just
how, does it grow? You drop a seed into the ground. How does it work? You have an idea how it
Well,
works?
you gotta put soil and you have to let
Yeah,
the
but
roots
could
grow.
has anyone, my kids have tried this, but has anyone here ever tried to chew soil?
do
Chew
it
soil?
To chew soil.
to eat it.
No,
to
but I
eat
know
soil.
people that
My
do.
sister
Who would
has,
eat
but
soil?
Kids like soil,
You
but my
eat
point, but my point is like
Yeah,
this:
kids eat dirt all the
soil
time.
is inedible.
How do you know? Have you
Like-
tried to?
My well, it
Undigestible?
isn't okay. Just soil.
Yeah, regular soil. You like undigestible? Like
No, it's not undigestible. It's just not food. And then a seed is not food either. Yet
Oh, yeah,
the
together.
magic of putting them together, we call that a
That is kind of
miracle.
weird.
science.
It's a miracle.
Yeah, I never thought about
And
it
when
that way.
you stop and say, thank the Almighty for bringing bread out of the ground, the Almighty transformed soil into bread that gives you nourishment and nutrition and sustenance, that's a miracle. But when you recognize that, what are you not doing?
I know. I'm so
What are you not
sorry.
doing?
Trying to figure out what you're doing with the water.
Oh,
When you
She's
recognize
making
God, what are you
strawberry
not
juice
doing?
water.
yeah.
When you recognize God, what you're not doing.
When someone recognizes God, what they're not doing, what are they not doing? They're not ignoring God. Right? What happens when someone ignores God? Yeah, sorry. What happens when someone ignores God?
They're not recognizing God.
That's true. But what does God do when someone ignores him?
Oh, I can't eat
Ignores them.
No.
He
not-
forces his way into that.
Exactly.
Snoop on our cookie.
I'll give you guys a story here. So you had this guy, highfalutin attorney who worked in the Empire State Building on the 70th floor. Before cell phones, his phones were down and he got locked into his office.
Oh my gosh.
And it's getting late and there's no one around and it's getting darker and darker and he wants to get out, but he's locked in from the outside. So he goes over to the balcony and starts shouting to passerby downstairs. Shouting, I'm here, I'm stuck, come get me out. And no one can hear him because there's a wind, but it's very far away. So he takes coins out of his pocket and starts dropping the coins down. And in the hopes that someone will scoop up some coins and look up and see where their goodness is coming from and save him. But no one does. Everyone scoops up the coins and the money, and he starts throwing dollar bills, and he's throwing 5s and 10s and 20s and 50s and 100s, and people just take the money and run, right? No one ever looks up to thank him, to notice him, to recognize him, and to save him.
Where is this?
Is in New York City. So he goes over to the potted
That
plant.
makes sense.
He goes over to the potted plant, and he takes a handful of pebbles and throws them down.
Oh my gosh.
And people see the pebbles raining down from the
And they're
sky,
gonna look up.
and they look up and they say,
Oh my
That's
gosh.
This,
so great.
that's an analogy. Listen to this, guys. This is the explanation of the analogy. The Almighty wants us to notice Him. to recognize him, to have a relationship with him. That's that destination that we need to be focused on. And he does good for us, and he gives us coins and dollars and nickels, and right, everything's fine, and we don't notice, and we ignore him. So you know what he does when we ignore him, right? So we don't recognize that God. We ignore him. When we ignore him, he nudges us awake. And he gives us things, and suddenly when bad things happen to us, we say, oh, where was God when this bad thing happened? I stubbed my toe. Oh, the Almighty hates me. You know why? Because we're programmed to think of God when bad things happen and to ignore God when good things happen. When we make a blessing, we acknowledge the goodness that God does. We save ourselves from having to be forcibly awakened and aroused to the existence of God.
Wow.
So,
Aroused. That's a lovely word, too. It's better than awoken.
yeah, it's a good word.
Lovely. Your vocabulary. Wow.
Thank you.
You're a walking dictionary.
And I think this is kind of like a nice little benefit. We talk about eating kosher and kind of being mindful of our life and living more purposefully. And then we see that it's really what life is all about. You know, this is obviously a small example of a bigger picture here. So it's about food, but it's not just food alone. It's really everything that we have in our life. It's this conflict. It's this model wherein we are trying to keep our eye on the ball, and there are all these distractions, and food and the way the Torah prescribes us to eat food, they kind of assist us in having the right focus. You make a blessing, you recognize God, right? You also keep, you acknowledge the existence of this big world that we know is out there. And let me tell you something a little terrifying, and with this we will conclude.
But then you're going to make it positive at the end.
This is very positive.
It's okay.
Very positive.
Good job.
So there's a big hullabaloo now about climate change, right?
Yeah.
So we're not going to talk about it itself. Let's assume that it's all real, right? We're not going to have that argument. We're assuming it's real. And then there's this beach, this shoreline. And every year, the water gets higher and higher. The beach gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then some guy comes over and he says, listen, I have the deal of the century. There's a lot. It's an amazing lot right by the beach. You build a house, it'd be a fantastic vacation home. And look, it brings you out there, and you're like, that's great. You're just a couple of feet away from the water. It's wonderful, right? You build a really nice, big, beautiful house, and you'll have this summer home forever, right? And then he says, just one thing before you sign the dotted line. I want you to know that every year, the tide moves up 7 inches. So in 5 to 10 years, your house will have 3 or 4 feet of water on it. Does it make sense for you to make this investment? Obviously not, right? We have to realize, this is undeniable. Whatever you believe, whatever you don't believe, it's undeniable that each one of us around this room, within 100 years, most likely, maybe a little, is going to be interred in the ground, and we're going to decompose, and little worms are going to eat at our flesh.
But I don't like to think about that.
But that's true.
Okay.
As much as you hate it,
worms.
that is true of each and every one of us. It's true. It's depressing, but it's true. If we make it our focus to invest in a commodity that's rapidly diminishing value, if this is our only focus is on our current iteration of who we are as a body and soul fused together, we should know that our investment is guaranteed to go to zero. Guaranteed. We know in a few years, we'll be underwater. Right? Proverbial, right? We'll be underground, but underwater, right? We know that that's true. That's absolutely true. When we make a blessing, we have this recognition of this bigger picture and this bigger world out there and this eternal existence that we have and that we ought to make a priority. Right? Yes, I'm not trying to eschew and reject and withhold and abstain and be ascetic and disregard our current iteration, our body-soul fusion. But we have to realize this is all temporary. It's all temporary, and thus we have to tailor our priorities to that reality, to that breakdown of importance. It's true. No one can deny it. Even if you don't believe in God, and even if you're an atheist, you have to realize that one thing is for sure, and that investment that you're making in your body is guaranteed to be valueless once you're dead. You'll say, oh, well, maybe you can help your kids. Fine, there is the argument to be made. But the point is that you investing in your body and its associated agendas, that is an investment that is guaranteed to be in the water soon.
Unless you're talking about like prolonging your life.
Yeah, but that's just delaying. It's like it's
not
kicking the can down the
giving you
road.
More time to do good, let's say.
Maybe, but I agree. But that is only predicated if the good is the ultimate good.
Correct.
But
Look at what he said as like the glass half full versus.
oh yeah, so there's a
glass half
positive.
empty.
Well, and that's precisely my point. Yes, if we don't have this soul-centric perspective, it's a very depressing world out there, because it's just a race to zero, right? It's just, in the words of Tony Soprano, right? It's just you're lifting weights, you go to Italy, you watch a movie, and it's all a series of distractions till you die. That's what it is. Series of distractions till you die. And you know what? That is very depressing on one hand. But we are gifted by this possibility, by this dream, by this understanding, by the sensibility of our soul. And we know that what we do, our mitzvahs that we do today, last forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Our soul is impervious to climate change. Right? A soul lives forever. And we ought to also focus on investing our times and efforts and focus into those pursuits.
Well, that question of distractions till you die, or what's the point of all that's the original question.
That's true, but I'm saying that the understanding is that it's the death is finality, right? We have a much bigger perspective, and we know that we can, in this temporary, transient existence, achieve things that last forever, and that's, I think, remarkably inspiring. And every time we make a blessing, we're making an investment into our IRA, into our Roth, into our HSA, into our permanent savings account. That's not going to disappear when we die. And that is, I think, very, very inspiring. And it's pretty incredible that with something as simple and as basic as just eating food, we're able to gain such a valuable perspective on life itself. Thanks a lot, guys. Lots of fun.
Thank you.